summarize myself. I can do it in 45 minutes. With a recruiter or an interviewer who's not very well organized, who doesn't ask good questions, no, you need every one of those minutes.
One caveat about internet reviews, just remember that the only people who write reviews are very happy or very unhappy. So whatever it says, take 20% off it.
Yeah, it's not a bell curve.
No, exactly.
It's just the opposite.
Yeah. Okay, so the second place you can assess the company is using your network. You don't need to ask the interviewer or someone that you meet at the company about the company culture, because if they're interviewing, 9 times out of 10, they'll tell you whatever's on the poster in HR anyway, because they are selling the company to you as much as they're interviewing you. That's right. Part of the point of interviewing. But if you can find someone in your network who's worked there, or knows someone who works there, or knows one of the managers there, they will give you far better information. And it's guaranteed. If the managing director is a guy who yells all day, he yelled at everybody all day 3 jobs ago too. So even if you can only find out something that was about one of the people a long time previously, most of us don't change a huge amount. And certainly really bad behavior or really good behavior tends to get rewarded, and so we carry on with it.
Exactly. Okay. And we've already alluded to a bunch. We recommend you get an offer first. There's nothing wrong with interviewing. No, there's nothing wrong with learning about the company so that you can make a good decision. But there is something wrong with interviewing the interviewer, because when you're being interviewed, you don't have an offer. So our guidance is get an offer first, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. So let's take an example. So one of the things that's often important to candidates is flexible working, whether that's because they have an elderly parent, or they're studying, or they're picking up children, or just, they were students and they can't get out of bed in the morning. And if flexible working hasn't been mentioned in all the interviews you've had, and you haven't been able to find out about it, what the company's policy generally or this manager's attitude is in specific, then once you get the offer, then you can ask about it.
Right.
But flexible working and leaving at 3 o'clock every day or 5 o'clock every day on the dot to pick up your child from daycare, even though we probably don't want this, we don't want this to be true as a society, it is true that it makes you a less valuable employee. It's a ding in the fact that you can't stay for an extra 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or you can't take over from a colleague, or you're not there when somebody expects you to be. And so you only want to talk about it after they've decided you're a great candidate.
Yeah.
At that point, they'll say, okay, you're a great candidate. Yeah, I can live with that small flaw.
Yeah. A way to think about this is, again, not until you get the offer. It's totally okay to evaluate a company in that way. But remember, there's getting the offer, and before you have an offer, the whole purpose of interviewing is evaluating you. Any interest you have in evaluating the company comes at the expense of the company evaluating you. And if we don't have enough time to make a decision, we're going to say no. If we don't have enough information to make a decision, we're going to say no. Once you get the offer, in fact, the definition of an offer, the root definition of an offer, guys, is when control passes to you. That's why offers feel so good. So when you have control, it is now time for you to evaluate them. It's time for you to start asking questions. And in fact, people like me and other executives say, this is great. He busted his tail to get us to the point where we'd be excited. But now he's not dumb enough to simply accept willy-nilly. He wants to feel good about the decision. Because he had questions and he sublimated them to the process of us learning about him, now he has to ask us some questions because it's his time, because we've offered him a job, and now it's time for him to ask questions.
Yeah, until the offer, you're trying to persuade someone to buy your product, what you're selling, which is you. And no salesperson worth his salt tells you about all the faults of the product before you convince yourself to buy, right? They always tell you, nobody will tell you it's a lemon.
You know, it's funny. I've used this example of sales before, and people have said, well, but I talk to salespeople all the time, and they try to get to know me, and I'm just trying to get to know the person. Yeah, okay, but actually, no, you're trying to get to know the company, and that's not the person. And generally speaking, interviewers are slightly uncomfortable in what they're doing, unless they do a lot of interviews. And the chances that they like you and don't learn anything about you and then say yes are virtually zero. If they'll like you, they'll like you. The idea that you can not talk about yourself, ask a bunch of questions about the company, have a chit chat, and then have them say, well, I like the guy. Well, what did you learn? Nothing. And so therefore I want to move him forward. No, that's not the way it works. So the sales analogy is a good one as long as you understand that you're the salesperson and you don't want to be talking about things that aren't relevant to the product, which is you.
Yeah. I came up with some examples for things that you might want to ask. There's only 3, but the first one I would think of is not weird. The third one verges on weird and would make me have second thoughts about a candidate. So they kind of go down a scale. So just think about that while I'm telling you. So one of the things you could say is, I'd love to accept this offer, and in the interest of fairness, I'd like to tell you I need to leave at 5 every day because my child is in daycare. If that's okay with you, then I'd be happy to join your team. Or, I'd love to accept this offer, and I had a really bad experience with a tiny broom cupboard office in a previous job. I know this is a really minor thing, but can you just tell me where I'll be working? If it's one of those offices I saw when we were interviewing, that would be great, and I'd love to take the offer.
Yeah.
Or even, I'd love to accept this offer. Before I do you mind if I talk to one of your team members and ask a couple of minor questions? I had a couple of bad experiences and I'd like to ask some really minor things, and I don't want to take any of your time up. And if you want to ask, where they go for lunch, then ask the team manager.
Yeah. And again, guys, this is only after you have an offer. Now, I will tell you that the 5 o'clock thing, you're not saying that of those 3 things, the third is weird and the other 2 are not. All 3 of them are well toward the end of the scale, right? Because there's no reasonable person who says, I would have to go home every day at 5 o'clock. I mean, because, look, folks, no offense, your kids outrank your work. But if you have your child in a daycare, which requires you to be there at 5, I actually don't believe daycares like that exist.
No, there's usually a late fee, which you might want to avoid.
Yeah.
It's like the people that say, I have to put my children on the bus in the morning for school. No, you don't. Like, don't 15 children get on the bus at the same time? So there's other parents there. So if you really needed to, somebody else could put the child on the bus.
Yeah. That said, those are all questions that if you feel you want to ask that kind of question, we're not going to tell you not to. We would advise you against it. But those are really, I think, special cases. The point is, those are on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just asked that, I'm going to rescind the offer. Those are getting toward 7. But they're not 9s. And if those are the kinds of things you need to know, you can ask them. Because if you don't have that information, then you feel you can't make a decision. And I also think it's fair to say, okay, these are the things that concern me. Are they really black and white, per your point, Wendy? And another thing is, would you tolerate a company asking you those kinds of questions? And what most people say is, no, they can't ask that. So, well, then why are you asking the company that?
That's right.
If you feel like it may be inappropriate for them to ask you, maybe you just decide this company may not be right for me, which, by the way, is completely okay. Okay, Wendy, why don't you sum up?
Okay, so don't interview the interviewer, assess the company, and get an offer first.
Yeah, we don't interview the interviewer while we're being interviewed, right? Because the interviewer is the person talking to you when you're being interviewed. Assess the company separately through other ways. And remember, there are 2 parts to your job search: getting offers and taking offers. You cannot take offers you don't have. And the first part, getting an offer, is all about you, and it has nothing to do with the company. The company only matters if they give you an offer, and if you spend time asking them about themselves before they give you an offer, they may not have enough time to give you that offer, and so therefore they'll say no, and your questions will be moot anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Wendy.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope the next time you're in an interview, you don't think it's your turn to grill them.